Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world in this moment, looking at this, watching this program. Today, we are speaking about a very, a topic that should not be controversial, but is very controversial indeed. That is Catholic identity. And the subtitle is In Search of a Meaning, because it seems that this identity is not so well recognized in today's world. So I want to speak about this topic with some guests that I am very glad I was able to invite in this program. So I'm going to introduce them. I start from Julian Langella. Julian is French and is the writer of a book that is available in French, of course, but also in Italian and in English. And in English, you can find this book called Catholic and Identitarian, From Protest to Reconquest, published by Actos. So thank you very much, Julien, for your participation. And then we have an old friend of our programs, Father Francesco Giordano, that is involved in many things. It is also a professor in the Catholic University of America and at the Angelicum in Rome. So thank you, Father Giordano, for your participation. And for the first time, we have Alexander Tschugguel, that is the head of the Boniface Institute. And some of you may know him for some things in the news in the past, but I think his contribution and his fight for Catholic identity would be very interested to learn from him. So thank you, Alexander, for your participation in this program. And then we have a guest that I think is not the first time he's my guest. No, it's not the first time. It's for the second or the third time. Is now newly appointed as the president of Una Voce Federation, and is a professor in, I think, Oxford, if I'm not mistaken, yes, of philosophy, and is Joseph Shaw. So thank you, Joseph, for your participation. Then we are waiting for James Bogle, that is not yet with us, but I hope he will be able to join us as soon as possible. So I want to start introducing this very important topic, and I want to start with Father Francesco Giordano. Father Francesco, do you know that sometimes people, when you ask them if they are Catholic, they say, "Oh, I'm not Catholic, I'm Christian."
Yeah.
I think that maybe they think that they say the same thing, but for me, it's not the same thing. So I want your thoughts on this distinction between Catholic and Christian.
Okay. Yes, just yesterday I was walking around in the village here in France, and a woman was very kind. She said, "Mon père," which is good that she said "mon père." She was one of the people that was in her shop. I had to go purchase something. And then she said that she didn't go to Mass. It's very common to hear this today. I think there's a crisis of Catholic identity, and that needs to be recuperated. A lot has been let go, and it's really, I think, really culpability of this has to do with the way the clergy have educated the people, not to make these distinctions. Also, this emphasis on ecumenism at all costs. And that, in the end, the ecumenical dialogue becomes a dialogue between whom? And so with this in mind, as you're bringing this up, as I was thinking about Catholic identity, I was thinking about how today in many academic circles, you'll hear about Emmanuel Levinas. And he just was mentioned 2 weeks ago in the Vatican at the Pontifical Academy of Life with this professor from Brazil who was using his emphasis on relationship as opposed to identity. And he gets cited a lot for his work with multiculturalism. he stresses, like Paul Ricoeur and many others, the idea of the I as the other. And his famous quotes, the other as another is not only my alter ego, he is what I am not. What Levinas and other philosophers of this school failed to address is the importance of identity before one can engage in a relationship with another. The relationship between three persons in the Trinity, for instance, is the weakest link of their personhood. The Father is not the Son not the Holy Spirit, and likewise for the other persons. However, what I see in all of this is an abuse of this theology by adapting intertrinitarian relations to human relations. And there's a lot of debate on this topic, especially on the 29th question of the Prima Pars in the Summa. However, I'm not here to dwell on theology, but theology and philosophy do have a lot to do with what's going on today, and the abuse of theology and philosophy. And so in more practical terms, today we are witnessing an identity crisis in Catholicism, in the West in general, as we witness this woke movement. And much of this can be linked to what we see in the family. But one can also see this is what Keith Winchell, this Australian author, says. He coins the killing of history, the killing of history. At the end of this book, it's a beautiful analysis of the problems with literary critical theory. Winchell correctly warns of the increasing tribalism before us. And a lot of identity has been a loss of identity has created a vacuum and a crisis in civilization as it is. And we cannot fail to see the root of Western civilization is the Catholic Church. When the Roman Empire fell in the West, all there was to unite these disparate tribes was the church. And she operated with a central authority that considered the value of each subsidiary civil leader in a feudal system of sorts. And so if we want to go back to understanding who we are, and we want to actually be able to dialogue with other people, we have to know who we are, and we have to know our origins, we have to appreciate our history, we have to appreciate the dogma of our faith.
Thank you, Father Francesco. In a short while, I will go to Dr. Shaw because I'm curious about this link between the loss of identity and modern philosophy, and I think you can give us some ideas where we can follow. But before, I want to ask Julian Langella about his book. You call your book Catholic and Identitarian. So you put a strong emphasis on this idea of identity. So why you have you are thinking that it's very important to emphasize this word identity?
First, I have to say that when I say identitarian, of course, I am talking about a political point of view. I am not telling that Catholicism has to be identitarian, and I am not saying that a good Catholic is identitarian on the political scene. Of course, to being Catholic is a personal and a collective relationship with God under the guard of the Virgin Mary, and also I think the only way to preserve the cross is to defend the land where the cross is rooted. And the cross, just at the beginning of the times, was rooted in Europe, in Latin and in Greek Europe. So it gave a particular color on Christianity. Our Christendom is culturally European. So I think that all the attacks on church are also attacks on European tradition, European traditional thinking. And maybe the best way to preserve Christianity is to preserve intelligence, is to preserve intelligence in philosophy, inside all the cultural circles. And it is very important to understand that, of course, Christianity and identitarian politics are separated, but they are linked in a kind of way. So maybe our best allies are some identitarian leaders, not all Christians, but brave people, just as Clovis and the pagan Franks were the best allies with bishops at the end of the Roman Empire.
Thank you, Julien. And after Dr. Shaw, I will ask Alexander also. I want you to start to think about. You are from Austria, if I remember correctly. You are, in any case, your country very close to Germany, where a lot of the revolution is happening, we may say. And so after Dr. Shaw, I want you to give us an idea to what is the balance between the forces between the identitarian and revolutionaries, that way we may say. But before, I want to ask Dr. Shaw, so Joseph, can you tell us a little how philosophy help this loss of Catholic identity? Thank you.
Well, Aurelio, with your permission, I'd like to address something that Julian has said, which I found very interesting. Not long ago, last week or the week before, I had to engage publicly with Massimo Fagioli, who claimed that the reason why the traditional Mass had to be suppressed around the world was because it was European culturally. And I think perhaps with Julian, I have discovered the possible origin of this kind of idea. The idea that Catholicism is culturally European in some sense, and therefore its Europeanness needs to be emphasized. And I think that, well, I'm not familiar with Julian's ideas in general, but I would like to change the emphasis here, which I think can, to avoid a possible misunderstanding. As I said in response to Fagioli, it's not so much that the Mass or European or Christian culture is European in the sense that it's caused by Europe. It is the source of European culture. And there's a very important difference there, because what Christianity comes from, what Catholic Christianity is not European, it's Asian. It comes from Judaism, and it comes from the Mediterranean world of antiquity. And there's no such thing as Europe in the ancient world. I mean, they talked about it, but it's not a cultural phenomenon. There's the Mediterranean world, and then there's the periphery beyond that in different directions. So what we have in the late antiquity is a culture which is Italian, North African, Gaulish, and Greek, which has absorbed this material from Judaism and from the East in general, and that created European culture. Now, that's obviously, to say that is very different from saying that the church is European in its cultural expression, or it's European. It bears European culture, or Europeans have to kind of rally around the church because it's theirs. Well, it's theirs in a sense because they've been formed by it, not the other way round. So when it goes forth into other cultures, in Latin America, in Asia, actually, we're not talking about a kind of cultural colonialism when the church takes the Mass and other cultural elements of Catholicism to those places. It's taking something which is actually far older than European culture in any meaningful sense, and it can be adapted. It can be enculturated, to use a peculiar word, by those cultures to form something which is truly authentic, which certainly connects them with European culture, but not as a descendant of European culture, but as a cousin or a sibling of European culture.
Thank you, Joseph. And so later, maybe we will talk more about philosophy. And I want to add that then maybe Julien also later would like to clarify more what you intend to say. But I understood in this way that, of course, Catholicism is of everyone, but culturally, Europe has a so important part in its development, and that cannot be forgotten, because it would be to lose a lot of what then became Catholic identity. You know, when people speak to me about, for example, I teach Gregorian chant when I was in Asia, living, teaching there. I teach to my students, and they say, "Oh, but you teach Gregorian chant that is like European." I said, "But you are wrong. This is not European music. This is Catholic music. I teach them Catholic culture, not European culture." So this is a very important topic, and we will discuss more. But I want to go to Alexander first, and I want to welcome Mr. James Bogle, that arrived now, the former president of Una Voce Federation, and thank you for being present. And now we go to Alexander. So Alexander, you are from a very important country where there is another very important country near to you that is causing a lot of troubles. So I want to your point of view. I saw in your Wikipedia that you are responsible of many actions in defense of Catholic, your Catholic identity. And so what you can say of everything also was said until now, please.
So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. To a little bit explain what Austria is like, you have to know that historically Austria was founded to defend the Christian West, especially the already Christianized Germanic South, against the pagan Hungarians. So this is our founding history, and therefore it's maybe our vocation, and we still have something to do here. Well, about the Catholic identity in general, I think that whenever Catholicism comes to, whenever people is our mission, there's mission done on people. I don't know the correct English term. What I see is that it actually changes their culture to the best. So we see that different people from around the world develop a little bit different way of a Catholic culture. So definitely there is something which also is still very important about our roots, even our roots before we were Christians. So for example, here in Austria, we have lots of Germanic things still left, lots of Slavic things still left, lots of Hungarians or Magyar things still left, which then developed into a Catholic society and Catholic culture. About Catholic identity, I think that to understand what is going on right now and why step by step the Catholic identity is taken away from us, we have to understand how the attacks on our culture and how the attacks on everything we do on earth work, and who is actually leading them. And then we can understand how we can fight against them. As before already mentioned, I think by you, Father, it was that we see that whenever the Catholic Church is pushed back, the Catholic faith, we see paganism and all those things, integralism and so on, coming up again. So we see that those things don't really disappear, as they are really anti-Christian, and therefore whenever Christianity is gone, they have room again to develop. I think our fight, and that's what I wanted to say first before engaging in the discussion, I think our main fight right now is to publicly defend the Catholic identity, the Catholic teaching, the Catholic Church, and to publicly defend it not only from our official enemies, so from the people who want to officially abandon the Catholic Church, like most of the leftist group and the Green group and the atheists and so on, but only from so-called lukewarm Christians who think that you can mix Catholic teaching with the zeitgeist, so with the how do you say the spirit of the time? Yeah.
Spirit of the time.
Spirit of the time. Thank you. So you can mix it with the spirit of the time, and at the end, there was a kind of modern Catholicism is coming out. If you do that, the first thing you'll do is you lose your identity. I'll give you an example for it. maybe it's not the best, and maybe the father will make a better example afterwards. But if you have a painting, and this painting is let's say it's a beautiful painting, so a traditional classical painting from, let's say, the 17th century, and you want to position it in a very good way, then you have to put it into a frame. So you have to make an exact border, and then you have to put it on an exact place with exact rules of lighting, rules of who can look at it, and things like this, in order to defend it if people want to harm it and things like it, or from people who want to steal it and so on. It doesn't really work out if you don't do the frame, because then it's just getting uglier and you can put it everywhere and so on and so forth. So it needs those rules, and those rules is what the Catholic Church and the Catholic identity actually provides us. So we know how a country should look like. Actually, we have tons of teaching on it. The Catholic philosophy helps us really. We know how to fight for something. We know when we are allowed to defend something and when we are not allowed, as when we should, hold our other side of the face. So we all know those things. And nowadays, fight, therefore, is not so much defending our so-called Christian society. That's now my maybe most controversial statement for today. I do not think you can really defend a nowadays society and say, well, I try to defend the Christian society, but you rather have to defend the Catholic Church, the Catholic society, so the people who are baptized and who lived according to the Catholic faith, and with them defend what really forms Catholicism and what really forms a Catholic society. And second of all, because Julian said this, I think, yes, there are many pagans and many non-Catholics who understand part of this. So, for example, pagans who look at the traditional architecture in France or in Austria or whatever and think, well, that's really beautiful. I want to have this in the future as well. But the problem is that you can't really fight side by side with them, because the main reason for our fight is to defend God, to go into heaven, actually, to follow God's laws, to defend everything God wants us to defend, so more or less to carry our cross, and to carry the cross God gives us and gives also our people. And someone who does not share this point of view will, at some point of the fight, just go away. Or he will be I'm missing the word, but he will be made converted and then join the fight. That's obviously good. So I think what is needed is a strong hierarchy, actually, also of laymen. I think also a layman's hierarchy, which is capable, again, to really fight for the Catholic faith. So to know what to sacrifice, to know not only a reputation and money and things like this, but in the future we have to be ready to sacrifice our lives. I give one last example. Today I went to the embassy of Nigeria, because next to it, here in Vienna, because next to it there's a wonderful coffee, and I went to go have a coffee there. And there was a big demonstration going on from the southeastern Nigerians who want to separate from main Nigeria because of Islam. They want to separate because in northern Nigeria you have those Boko Haram sects and so on. And they handed out leaflets. And in those leaflets they wrote, this is our country. We were raised there. We don't want to get destroyed and so on. So we are going to fight for it, even if we die. That's what they wrote. And this is the fighting spirit we need. This is the fighting spirit we need right now. So that's why.
Thank you, Alexander. And I want to go to James Bogle and ask him this. Looking at our faces, you are the older among us, so also older than me. This is a relief for me, because I was the older before you enter, so that I feel a little better. But I want to ask you this. You have a long experience in the Catholicism. So according to your opinion, in what point we are of this struggle for Catholic identity? Because this is a struggle going on for many years. But today, for you, what is the situation of this Catholic identity according to your personal point of view?
Well, thank you, Aurelio, for inviting me on the program. I think it's a very interesting question. I think, first of all, I would draw a distinction between religion and culture. although they clearly interact very closely, and the Catholic religion informs our culture. I think that's the way it works. Catholicism is a religion, first and foremost, with cultural aspects. And our cultural identity is formed by the Catholic religion, but is not, is a separate thing from it, as well as being informed by it. They interact, but they aren't the same. And that is, moreover, something that the Catholic religion teaches and enhances. So if we think of our culture as some monolithic or uniform thing, then we are falling for the globalist agenda that wants everybody to be the same throughout the whole world. And that is the opposite of what the Catholic religion teaches about culture. The Catholic religion teaches diversity of culture under the aegis of the true religion. And even within Catholic societies, the most tolerant form of society is a Catholic society, because it will tolerate all but the most antisocial and anti-human religions, and it does so better than any other society, particularly, of course, a secular society, as we're increasingly seeing. So in order to understand the position of Catholic identity, and I think there is such a thing as Catholic identity, and the cultures informed by the Catholic religion today, we need to obviously study history. And historically, we can see that for reasons known probably only to God, certain cultures were chosen to incubate the Catholic religion. The first and foremost of those is the Jewish culture, out of which Christianity grew, and which has informed particularly our forms of worship in the early church. But then, of course, that was transferred to the Roman Empire. And the fact of the matter is that, and there's no getting around this, what transmitted Christianity to the known world was the Roman Empire, and ultimately the conversion of the Roman emperor. And then on the 27th of February, 380 AD, the formal declaration of Emperor Theodosius I, that the official religion of the Roman Empire would be Catholicism. So that has centered the initial cultural milieu of the Catholic religion in the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is largely coterminous with what we now call Europe, although, with some differences. So there is a particular connection, and we can't get around this, and we don't want to get around it, between the inheritors of the Roman Empire, that is largely European culture, and Christianity, particularly Catholicism. But the reason why I distinguish between culture and religion, whilst they are obviously interconnected, is that Catholicism, which the word means universal, is a religion for the whole world, not just for Europeans. And one of the mistakes that secularists and anti-Catholics make is that they think that Catholicism is a European or Western religion. It's not. Actually, in origin, it's an Eastern religion, started in the Middle East. But it started among Jews, and Jews, by common consent, are often regarded as a persecuted people. So we have our origins in a people who were persecuted, and not those who were primarily in charge of society, although subsequently, of course, with the establishment of Christendom, Catholicism became the state religion. But the important point is that it is a universal religion with varying different cultures. And I think it's important that we make this point to those antagonistic to the Catholic religion. It is therefore just as suitable for people living in the North Pole or the South Pole or Africa or America or Latin America or Asia, or dare I say it, the Middle East, after all, that's where it originated, as us Europeans. But there is a cultural connection. Now, one of the things that is, both of those ideas are now sidelined or shelved. First of all, the idea that Christianity developed under the Roman Empire. Everybody's just forgotten about that. And secondly, the idea that Catholicism is a religion for everybody, not just a particular culture. So it is open to all cultures. And then there's a third idea, which is again uniquely perhaps Catholic, and that is the idea of subsidiarity, which means not everything is centralized, quite the opposite, it's decentralized. And that is why in those areas where the Catholic religion has informed the culture, we see such a variety of cultural differences, such that in parts of Europe, you've only got to walk 10 miles and people have whilst in theory it's the same language, they have different way of speaking it, a different dialect. They have certain cultural differences. Now, I would suggest that this is a unique facet of Christian culture, of cultures that have been informed by Christianity and the Catholic religion, and is converse to those religions where they are seeking all the time to make everybody identical and uniform and the same, of which the worst is secularism. There's nothing more uniformist, dull, dreary, conformist as secularism. Quite apart from the fact that secularism in and of itself is a dead end, because it doesn't reproduce itself, and therefore it's going nowhere ultimately. So if we can get that sort of message across to people, then I think they will begin to understand a little bit more about the Catholic religion, why it's important to the growth of civilization. And then we should also add, and by the way, which civilization has contributed most in the history of ideas to the global environment? And the answer has got to be Christianity. If you go back and look and see what Christianity has contributed, science, medicine, law, art, literature, politics, government, even engineering, architecture, art, poetry. This culture, informed by the Catholic religion, has produced more of all of those goods for the benefit of the whole of society than any other religion. Not to say that other religions don't produce good things, of course they do. But I think everybody now recognizes that what they call Western culture, which is in fact not Western, it's Christian, or at least it's cultures informed by Christianity, is the culture that has contributed most to the development of society and of civilization worldwide. And there's no getting away from that. Once we can show and demonstrate that to the secularists who so much dislike and oppose Catholicism, then they will begin to see that they are making a mistake to try and eradicate Catholicism from society, whether it's European society or any other society.
Thank you. Then, of course, I will answer you other things. Before I go on, I want to remind you that we are in YouTube, Ritorno a Itaca, in Twitter, we will be on my channel and in Altare Dei channel. In Facebook, we are in Aurelio Porfiri's fan page. If you want to follow all of our program, you can go to Telegram and subscribe to my channel, Aurelio Porfiri. Also, I want to remind you about a few other things. Yesterday, we have a program on Joseph de Maistre. Joseph de Maistre, counter-revolutionary thinker. This is in Italian, but if you know Italian, I really suggest you to go and look for this program that is already there. On Sunday, we will have the starting of a new program called Ad Astra. The program will be, some will be in Italian, some will be in English. This one, the first one is in Italian. I will meet with Roberto Giacomelli and we will speak about the decline of men and the decline of masculinity. Then I want to remind you about a few books that are available in our publishing company. This one is A Future in Tradition, Remembering Michael Davis, that I wrote, and also where Mr. Bogle was interviewed by me about this book. This is available as the other in Amazon and in other online stores. And then the book I wrote with Aldo Maria Valli, Uprooted, Dialogues on the Liquid Church. That is, would be very good for you to read after today roundtable, because it touches all these topics. And then I want to remind you that there is the book I wrote. I collaborated with Bishop Schneider, The Catholic Mass, Ways to Reestablish God at the Center of the Liturgy, that is available from January with Sophia Press. And then last but not least, the book I collaborate with Cardinal Zen, God Has Never Abandoned Me, My Life in the Chinese Catholic Church. This will be available also in 2022. So sorry for this long interlude. So I want to go to Julian, because Julian, you hear that what you say has caused a lot of reaction about the Catholic identity, European, not European. So maybe you want to reply to what was said by the other speakers. And please go on.
I think that Christianity is not the root of Europe. I think Christianity is the trunk of the tree called Europe. Europe has multiple roots: Greek, Roman, Celtic, maybe Slavic, but the trunk, Christianity, just united all the influences and makes this flower grow, and it gives us Middle Ages, medieval Christendom. Just before Christianity, there was a culture. There was Aristotle, there was Greek philosophy, there was a tradition, a Roman tradition of ruling people and ruling defeated people, integrate them inside the empire. So I am not telling that Catholicism is only European, but I am telling that to convert people all around the world, Church used two strategies which are not opposed but complementary, which is complemented. First, Church, like in Southern and Central America, accepted local traditions, and in Scandinavia, you can see in the wood churches of Scandinavia some scenes of Nordic mythology. Just on the walls of the church, you can see the churches in Japan. Sometimes they look like Shintoist temple with the roof like that. And on the other hand, church and political forces like the Spanish crown have to make a choice. For example, the culture of the table, to have a common meal. It is not a universal tradition. In my family, I have Asian people from Thailand. They have no sense of common meal. They have no sense of what is the culture of the table. As a French, I know very well the culture of table. You all go at the same time on the table. You say hello when you enter the kitchen and so on. In Asia, in Southeast Asia, and in Thailand, it is not the same. You can enter the table, you can go out, you say hello or not if you don't want to. It is not a place, the table in these countries are not table to gather family. So as Europeans conquerors, just like the Spanish did in America, we had to promote some European way of life to, in the end, promote the Christianity. If many are gathered in my name, then I am with them. It is what Spanish people do in America, and you can see the fail of Jesuits in Japan. Without military political forces, Christianity in some countries is doomed, cannot grow. And it is all our religion. Our religion is a God incarnate. So God used all the ways to promote his word. It is all the history of church. So I think that Christianity, of course, is a universal religion because the truth is for everyone. And Christianity had to be taught in every language, every culture of people. And sometimes people with a better culture, superior, if you want, culture, had to promote some way of life who are much conformed to the very spirit of Christianity.
Thank you. I want to thank Julian Langella, and he has to leave us because of family responsibilities. So thank you very much, Julian, for your participation. That was very appreciated. I hope you will be our guest in the future for some other broadcast. So thank you again.
Sorry, Aurelio, but I just sent you a message. It is okay. I can stay with you.
Okay. Sorry. No, I didn't receive it. So that's better. That's better. So I want to give the word to Alexander because I think he want to reply something. So Alexander.
I wanted to add something. Thank you very much, Julian. I just wanted to say that I think that, for example, as pro-lifers, we all are pro-lifers, normally say every child is wanted. And if we, let's say, use this phrase on everything happening on earth, then we have to say there's a reason why God wants us to be born in a certain country from a certain family and so on and so forth. We see it especially with the Jews before Christ came, that he even wanted certain parts of the sacrifice in the temple be done by certain families only, and through Christ this obviously changed. But following this, I wanted to say that I think Europe, and we talk about the identity today. So as I'm an Austrian, I'm talking about the Austrian identity, and as an Austrian, I definitely see myself as a European as well, but not as a European in a form, in the way the European Union wants me to say this. I wanted to say something. I think God has had a plan for Europe. He had a plan for all our different countries, because what happened here was amazing. Just look in the last 2,000 years of history. We had Saint Peter coming to Italy, Saint Jacob coming to Spain, and things like this. We had countries like France and Italy, obviously, and Spain, but then also countries like the southern Germanic parts, like Austria and Bavaria, where already in the 3rd and 4th century, the dioceses were created and things like this. So this is really great. And let's not talk about Armenia and all those wonderful heritage we have down there. And the question is now for me, what do we do with all of this? So we now know, yes, our identities are different. And I also follow Jamie Bogle that that even among Catholics, there can be lots of cultural differences. But there's this one thing I said at the beginning, we all fight for the same cause. So the question is right now, what do we do with our Catholic identity? What do we do with our European identity and with our national identity? And I think we can only fight, and we can only win any fight if we, first of all, understand that our way to fight is to serve God's will. So to fight for what God wants. That's what we pray in the Our Father every day. And I want to give a little example for this, so that you all understand what I mean. And then the question is what you all say to this. I think that if we look at the leftists from a typical conservative point of view, many conservatives often say, well, look at them. Even though they fight with each other, they still fight for the same cause. And why can't we do this as conservatives? And the answer for that is actually quite easy to understand. If you're a lefty, your only goal is actually, I know that leftists wouldn't agree with me, but actually from the outside you can say this, to destroy the order, so to bring disorder in the world and to destroy every natural order. And therefore, it doesn't really matter on what side of the leftist paradise you are. As long as you keep destroying things, you are actually on their team. I bring an example. people from Europe who, for example, are very much in favor of LGBT laws, clapped and welcomed Muslims 2015, which is completely a contradiction, but not in their views, as both of them destroy Christian values and Christian society. And conservatives normally stand next to this and think, well, if I would build this building, which we call European culture, how would I do it? And therefore, obviously, they all fight with each other, because if it comes to order, whenever we try to keep, whenever we think that we personally, so you and I and so on, know what to do, we will also always come to the point where we don't know what to do anymore, and that's the point where everything breaks apart. But if we follow God, and God talked to us lots of times through his saints in the Holy Scripture, obviously, and even more, he sent his Son, who is God himself, to earth and preached us personally, then we actually can find out how to fight for a common cause. And there we can also understand that, yes, there is a plan for all our different nationalities. If you look to in the Bible, even though it's coming from the original sin, that we all have different languages and so on, and from Babel and all those things. But still, God has a plan for this, and God wants us to use all the things we get here to fight for the good cause. And that's the reason I think, and that's my conclusion, and I wanted to ask you what you think of it. Yes, it's very important to understand our national identity, but it's completely worthless in the long run if we don't understand that this national identity has to serve the Catholic cause, so has to serve actually God's will. And what I'm looking for since decades, and I didn't find it, and now I think we just have to do it, is I was always hoping that there was some kind of politician, or even obviously a bishop, but except Bishop Schneider, Kardinal Berg, and a few others who are, in my eyes, are heroes. I don't really know anyone who leads all those people who are standing next to us who are not capable of leading. Just one last comment on this. I do not think that everyone is a leader. I really do not think so. I even think that most of the people are no leaders, and I think that's good. I give an example. If you look at the hospital, you will need one guy who runs the hospital from an organizatory view. You need one who runs it from a doctoral, as from a medical point of view. Then you need lots of doctors who are below him to do what he tells them. You need even more nurses below them, and you need even more people who are supplying the hospital with energy, with food, with whatever is needed for a hospital. So you see that there is this pyramid which is very natural. And the problem is, through socialism, everyone now thinks that everyone should be on top level, and everyone therefore thinks that the low levels are not important anymore. Therefore, the people from the low levels always feel bad, always, the whole life. Therefore, they need someone who tells them, no, you're good, and I'm going to fight for you, that you're in a better position in the future. And therefore, people actually deny them right. Also have a simple job, a lesser understanding of politics, but maybe a better and greater understanding of certain other aspects of life, and so on. And therefore, the socialistic society's thinking came into the hearts of everyone. And now everything breaks apart. People don't get their pensions paid out anymore. People don't get the healthcare they were promised, at least not in Austria, not in Germany, not in Italy, and so on. You have to wait for months to get certain treatments, but you paid 40 years to pay for these treatments through the insurance system and so on. You have all the political systems, they're all corrupt. Now in Austria, we have a huge corruption scandal. I don't want to talk about the European Union. I don't want to talk about the election in the United States and things like this. So you have all those things, and people do not understand anymore how they can leave the socialist cage they were locked in 150 years ago, and even before, we can say, with the Reformation and afterwards, and so on. So therefore, I think Catholic identity means fighting for one's family, for one's home country, and for a Christian society, but before all of this, especially according to God's law, God's rule, God's teaching, gospel, and things like this. And then you have a hierarchy which can create, without us being the architects, but God can be the architect, a new and working society.
Thank you, Alexander. I want to remind our viewers that next week, indeed, we are also speaking about a very important topic, that is modernism. On Thursday, we have an Italian program about modernism. On Friday, we have an English program about one specific, very important modernist, that is Alfred Loisy. We will have guests from United States that will discuss. And on Sunday, in Italian, I have a guest, a woman writer, and we will speak about feminism. That is something that probably will be also an interesting topic now. But I want to go to Father Giordano because I want to ask you something that I think is the pink elephant in the room. So when we speak about Catholic identity and the loss of Catholic identity, I think one of the main responsibility for this loss is from with the clergy. With the hierarchy, with their own policies about, God is not Catholic. This was said, So if God is not Catholic, why you have to be Catholic? I mean, that is the follow from this very statement. So I don't want, of course, to accuse you because, of course, you are very different from. But the point is that you are very different from the majority of the priests. I know that is a very bad statement. It means the majority of the priests are promoting that kind of of diminution of the Catholic identity. So how you think I'm wrong, or you think I hope I don't make you sick? No. Do you think I'm wrong, or what do you think of this opinion that I express? The microphone, remember?
Yes. Sorry, I just sneezed because I have a cold right now in this period.
Yes.
And you certainly asked a big question. It is the elephant in the room. I don't even know where to begin precisely, but well, I guess I could say that clearly our role as priests is to defend the cultus, is to defend the culture in that regard. And the cultus that's our proprium, to celebrate the Mass, to celebrate the sacraments, to celebrate those, to bring those instruments of salvation to the people. We are in that sense mediators, like Christ is a mediator, right? And so if we don't do that, and if there's confusion in that, then there's going to be confusion in everything else. So if you want to talk about Catholic culture, you have to talk about Catholic cultus, about the worship, Catholic worship. And so there's a lot of division in Catholic worship today. I often like to say velismo, vel. You can celebrate this way or that way or this way or that way, whatever way. Well, that's obviously created confusion and division in the church. We see people going from one parish to another, because they just basically have a supermarket of parishes. And that's what we have to try to bring back together, So it's becoming more and more evident that this is the problem. And that is what, in fact, young people are looking for. That helps them in their identity. The smells and bells, as we used to say, So yeah, I think that much of the problems that we have unfortunately do stem from what the clergy has done, and it's becoming more and more evident. I don't know. I mean, it really speaks for itself what's happening, and it's a very difficult position for us as priests to be in, to see all this division. I was remarking in the comments earlier, the communicatio idiomata, the communication of idiom, is at the basis of what the incarnation is. And when you think about that, I like to think about idioms, languages. And I like to think about what idiot means, that he who does not know the grammar of his own language. If we know the grammar of our own language, we're able to know other languages. And you see, the grammar is Catholicism. The grammar is the faith. The grammar.
But Father, can I ask you why for you is this situation? Why for you why the clergy is?
Why for me?
Yeah, I mean,
it's very difficult for me and for other priests today. It's very difficult. I mean, of course, it's difficult. How do I begin? I think it's right evident that it would be very difficult for priests today who are trying to understand what it is that they are as priests and trying to do what there's right, and then being reprimanded by other priests, older priests usually, and older bishops. There's a generational gap. The other day I was with an archbishop who was very upset about the young ideologues, he called them. And I really decided to put my foot down and said, "Excuse me, Your Excellency, have you been around in the parishes?" And this is in Rome, okay? And this is a bishop who's in the Vatican. And I said, "Have you been around?" He's an Italian bishop, archbishop. And I said, "Have you been around in the parishes? Have you seen what they have to offer?" And he said, "Well, he just didn't say it." And I said, because they really have very little offering in most of these parishes. And I think young people are looking for something more. And don't you think it's better if they look for something more edifying in the tradition of their own faith than looking into Buddhist mysticism or something of that sort? He had no answer for me. But they need to wake up and smell the coffee, these people, that a lot of what they have to offer is null. And what's worse about this, actually, is that these people have nothing to offer, and then they don't let anyone else offer anything that's better. So, and that's what's really bad about all of this, the situation, is that there's no freedom at all. And I always like to say, let's use excuse me, I'm thinking in Italian, I can't in English. The test in Acts of the Apostles there was this episode where this Pharisee said, "If it's from God, it will last." I'm forgetting his name right now. It escapes me for some odd instance. But if something is from God, let it be, let it go. If right now the tendency among the youth is to enjoy more traditional forms of worship, why do you have to stop that? Why do you have to go in and put a break? It's a perfectly healthy expression of the faith. And so this is one of the things that we, even as young clergy, we've been brought back into this. I mean, I entered the seminary in the first year of Benedict XVI's pontificate. And I was ordained in his pontificate. My early years of priesthood were in his pontificate. And I found that the year of the clergy, for instance, was very encouraging for us priests. And I did not find myself in any awkward situation. I do remember that the world at the time was very much opposed to Benedict XVI. I do remember all the media against him. But I did not find that to be the case within the church. I didn't find all this tension. And now, I'm sorry, but there's an incredible amount of tension and division, and it's before everyone to see. I'm not saying anything that's untoward. I think it's quite obvious to everyone that there's some problems.
Thank you, Father. I want to say thank you also to Alexander Tschugguel that has to leave our program. So thank you, Alexander. I hope you will be our guest in the near future when will be possible. So thank you very much for your very much appreciated contribution to this program.
Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you. Soon. Bye. I want to go to Joseph Shaw, because Father Giordano has said something very interesting that I think you can contribute a lot. And so he was speaking about the culture cultus. The priest has to be the man of the sacred, the man in charge of the celebration of the sacrifice. But we can connect with my previous question. Of course, we witnessed this last month all this barrage about the Latin Mass, Traditionis Custodes, and everything that follow from that. But you can, I think, agree with me that the most, how say in English, vehement, the most strong opposition come from clergy. I never met a lay person that say something against the Latin Mass. Honestly, I never, and I met a lot of priests that shout on me. I remember, I cannot mention the name because now this is an important person. He's a priest now in a very high position in his religious order, and I visited him when he was a simple pastor, and I told him that I was writing also for some traditional Catholic blog, and he started to shout at me, you write for this, you are like I was schismatic or something like this. So the biggest problem in talking about the liturgy is with the priest, with the bishops, with the cardinals, and going up. So how you can comment on this specific point of the liturgy?
Thank you very much. I think you're right. Obviously, there are lay people who are fanatically opposed to the traditional Mass, and I have encountered some of them over the years. But you're right. It is very much a phenomenon of the clergy, and it's quite telling. I think that it's a phenomenon not exclusively, but very associated with a specific generation of clergy. So it's the clergy who were active at the time of the council or its immediate aftermath. So these are priests, perhaps, who were young priests and other older senior priests, bishops, cardinals, whatever, who were
there is a problem with the connection. Hope if freeze. I don't know if it's about the topic or is the internet, but maybe we'll move on and then we will return to him when he's coming back the connection. I go to James Bogle. And James, so if you want to comment on the same question, basically. So this problem with the Latin Mass is mainly a problem related with the priest than with the lay people. If you can shortly tell us what is your opinion, why, yes, it's true there are some lay people also strongly opposed, but and of course I know also them, but the most come from the clergy. So how you comment about this?
Well, that's true up to a point, although there are plenty of lay people who are very hostile as well. I think the position of the clergy is slightly different because they are under the leadership of the bishops and ultimately the Pope, and if the bishops and the Pope show some hostility to a particular liturgy, then a lot of clergy will follow suit. And I think liturgy is important because it's where religion and culture meet. And when you have a liturgy like the traditional Roman Rite that goes back to the beginnings of the Church, nearly 2,000 years, any attempt to undermine that, or worse, to try and suppress it, will necessarily have very seriously negative effects. First and foremost, spiritually, but secondly, also culturally. The Anglican theologian, Dr. Catherine Pickstock of Cambridge University, even though she's an Anglican, she has, I think I'm right in saying, expressed the view that the traditional Roman Rite is a wellspring or a mainspring of culture in European Christianity and indeed in Western Christianity generally. And that is that's an interesting thing coming from an Anglican, but she can understand better than many clergy and many bishops why the traditional Roman Rite is so important. If you go to other rites within the church, and I wanted to make the point that, of course, in the early days of Christianity and for a long time after, the center of Christendom and the center of political and cultural Christianity was not Western Europe. It was the East. It was Constantinople. And before that, although it was based on Rome, it also incorporated much of North Africa and, of course, all of the Middle East. This is long before Islam. So we can look at the rites developed in those cultures.
Let's try again.
And one of the characteristics that you will notice about them is that the idea that they should have radical. Joe, you're not muted. You need to mute. But if you ask them, how would they feel about a radical alteration or suppression of their traditional liturgy? They'd be horrified, particularly, for example, the Ukrainians, the Russians, but also, others like the Chaldeans. Now, they are none of the Russians, of course, are on the edges of Europe. Chaldeans are not European at all. They're Middle Eastern. They're among the original Christians. Their liturgy is in Aramaic, which is the language of our Lord. It's a form of Hebrew. Now, if you said to them, we're going to suppress your liturgy, they would be utterly horrified, because it would be not only a head-on attack on their faith background, but their cultural background as well. And of course, that is, unfortunately, sad to say, what is happening in parts of the world, not least the Middle East, where Christianity is being directly attacked, churches are being destroyed, burnt to the ground, precisely to destroy the cultural presence of Christianity, because although I again emphasize that culture and religion are two separate things, for the reasons I've said, nonetheless, any religion, is embedded in a culture and informs a culture. So Buddhism in Tibet, in India, in Burma, Shinto in Japan, Islam in the Middle East, because Islam is very closely connected, as the Quran says, with the Arabic people. In fact, they are examples where there is an overemphasis of a connection between religion and a culture. But the Catholic religion, whilst it is for all people, it's not just for one culture. Nonetheless, it too has to have a cultural milieu. It has to sit within a culture. And historically, that has been the culture of the Roman Empire and the emanations of the Roman Empire. But those emanations can stretch across the whole world. And they can do so, contrary to what secularists say, without being colonialist or hegemonist or oppressive or whatever you want to call it, because the communication of religious truth isn't a form of colonialism. It's a form of communication of the truth. It's a completely different thing. So, but having said that, there is a cultural milieu in which the Catholic religion sits, and it is unquestionably Roman. It's not Italian, it's not Spanish, it's not German, it's not Portuguese, it's not English, it's Roman ultimately. But that's its cultural milieu. But it it starts there, but it doesn't end there. So it's as much African as it is Latin American, as it is American, or whatever, Mongolian for that matter. But if you attack the cultural associations, and above all, the cultural associations most intimately connected with religion, namely liturgy, you attack both culture and religion. And that is what we are seeing. Now, it's bad enough if that comes from the secular world, in a sense we expect that, or from some religion hostile to Catholicism. But what the unique phenomenon we are witnessing in the world today is that it's coming from within the Catholic Church, and at the very highest levels. It's a form of religious and cultural suicide. Now, if we believe that the Catholic religion is a true religion, it's hard to imagine anything more disastrous than the leaders of that religion, or the spiritual leaders of that religion, attempting to destroy the very pedestal or table or foundation upon which they stand. And yet that's what we are witnessing today. And the irony is that people outside the Catholic Church are often defending the historical and cultural traditions of the Catholic faith better than our own clergy. And that is, well, as one French novelist put it, it's le trahison des clercs. Now, what St. Pius X, Pope St. Pius X, said in his famous apostolic letter, Notre Charge Apostolique, is that the true friends of the people, I'll quote exactly what he says, the true friends of the people are neither revolutionaries nor innovators. They are traditionalists. And he is right. The traditionalists, and I prefer to call myself a traditionalist than a conservative, are the true friends of the people. And the true blessings of civilization, of prosperity, of peace, of everything that human beings hold good, has reached a particular pinnacle within Christian civilization. We oughtn't to be surprised about that if you believe that the Catholic religion is a true religion. But even if you don't believe that, you have the evidence of history and what is before your very eyes. And as I said earlier, nobody now disputes that that is the greatest and has been the greatest contributor to civilization. So those who wish to destroy that foundation are effectively attacking human civilization itself. And when we find that the people who are numbered among those attackers are our own clergy, then we have, let's just say, a very significant challenge on our hands.
Thank you, James. We are near to the end, but I want to ask Julian something, because you are French, and I like very much your country. Really, the culture. I like many things of your country, but I also noticed something, that your country is one of the main cause of some of the bad idea we have today, philosophy, the philosophers, the French Revolution, everything. But also, I can see that in your country there is also a strong reaction. So I want you to give me what is the situation now of the reaction. We may say the reaction to the progressive leftist idea. So what is the status of this reaction?
Yes, France is a kind of avant-garde of modernism. A lot of popes compared us, the French and the Franks, the old Franks, with Jews, like a kind of chosen people. And we were very high, and we fell very low. And there is a reaction, of course, but I have to think that the philosophy of deconstruction, of course, will deconstructionate. Sorry, my English is not so good. Itself, and it will fall. But it also did a lot of bad with falling down, and so we have a reaction. For example, here in the French political scene, we have a man journalist called, I think, Eric Zemmour, who is a Jew but a French patriot who defend Christianity, but he is not Christian, and he gathered around him a lot of people, a lot of Christian people, Catholic traditionalists, Catholic people. A few years ago, there was La Manif pour tous, the rally for everything, to protest against homosexual marriage, wedding. But there is a problem. It is that right wing is too much peaceful. I think in France and in a lot of countries, is too much peaceful and too much conservative. Because conservative of what? What do we have to conserve in this civilization in ruins? I don't want to conserve anything of the current civilization. I want to rebuild a new one with the eternal principles of our ancestors. But as philosophical conservative, I need to be revolutionary. We need a conservative revolution. We don't need just conservatism. I know that in the world and in the English scene, conservative is a very clear term, but in our French political tradition, conservatism do not exist. You have two different sides. You have no liberal, because liberal is leftist in English, but libertarian, free market side, and the tradition side. It's opposite. It's quite opposite. So a few minutes ago, I think that Alexander told us that the left wing is united, but the right wing is not united. Maybe because there is no such thing as right wing. There is a right wing side because we are against the left, but to build something, there is no right wing. You have a money right wing, the free market right wing, who is morally conservative, but who is for freedom to exchange, to make money. So freedom to make money and freedom to abort, for me, it's the same thing, because it's the narcissism, individualism. And on the opposite, you have the identitarian, traditionalist, national right wing, and this is the main problem, because the left, all the modernity is an invention of the left. You mean the political debate is an invention of the modernity. The right wing, the traditionalist, is a kind of stranger in our modern way of debating, and it is the most difficult problem for us. So there are a lot of reactions, but what I am seeking, it is to build new local Christendom, just as Rod Dreher said. I think it is more useful to build schools, to build local business, to conquer little town office, and to do town by town, neighbor by neighborhood, a new Christendom. And there are some initiatives. And the good way, the advantages of the France is that we have ideas, but because we are still Catholics, so we do not want to talk about money, and we don't have a lot of financial support for our project, but we have ideas, and there is some local Catholic communities who are not clerical, but laïc community, the laïc in France, who are trying to reconquest town after town of the country. I think that the way it is here, and more is that concrete activité concrète than in media debate.
Thank you, Julian. So I want to give the word for the last intervention to Joseph Shaw, so that because before he has also some connection problem. Joseph, you were talking about the lay people and traditional Latin Mass, but that most of the problem is coming from the clergy, from the hierarchy of the. Please go on with your intervention, and you are the concluding speech.
I apologize, Aurelio. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes,
I still haven't got online properly. But I was simply.
You need to sit back a bit, Joe. We're looking up your nose.
Is that better?
Yes.
I was simply observing that these a clergy of a certain generation are associated with themselves with the liturgical changes that they don't want to see them change back again, and that is something that you sometimes hear from the laity as well. That people say to priests, "Oh, that's not all coming back again." Older people. People who identified themselves with the changes, maybe assisted the changes, welcomed the changes, and there's a saying that you most people can convert only once. So if they change once, they can't change back again, and that's it's just a tragedy for those individuals. But in the last few years, the last 5 or 10 years, we've found that younger bishops, newly appointed bishops, are much more open-minded than their predecessors. They simply don't have that emotional investment into the destruction of the traditional liturgy. And that's now coming through into all sorts of important positions in the church. But you still have the oldest generation of priests. And it's, of course, the church, the Catholic Church, is in some ways a gerontocracy. It's ruled by the oldest generation.
Thank you, Joseph.
Can I just say one thing, Aurelio?
Yeah, please.
Sorry to cut in, but we have to face the fact the Catholic Church is in crisis, and that, of course, creates a cultural crisis as well as a religious crisis. It also creates all sorts of terrible disasters, like the clerical abuse scandal, which in turn makes the rest of the non-Catholic world, and indeed part of the Catholic world, have the gravest doubts about Catholic culture and about Catholics generally. This is a very serious problem, and we also have to recognise that our clergy and bishops are simply not of the quality that they once used to be. We once used to have, among our clergy and bishops, some extremely learned, scholarly, saintly, holy, and very eminent people, scientists, scholars, governors, lawmakers. And what we now have, unfortunately, and we have to admit this, and I personally think we should admit it to the secular world, is a collection of individuals, some of whom are extremely inferior and are not at all up to the job, shouldn't be bishops, and shouldn't be in positions of responsibility. And that, of course, is bound to create problems for the Catholic Church. But we as laity and the good clergy, I think if we admit these problems within the Catholic community, that our honesty will be more attractive to non-Catholics than the converse, which is currently going on at the moment, which is an attempt to cover it all up and pretend everything's just as good as it ever was. That's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you, James. So with these final remarks, I want to thank you all for your participation. And I think it was a very interesting and lively debate. So I want to thank Julian Langella, Father Francesco Giordano, Joseph Shaw, and James Bogle. Also Alexander Tschugguel, of course, that left a little earlier. I think it was a very good and lively discussion, and I hope to have you as my guest also in the future. So thank you very much to all of you. And I thank also the viewers, and I hope to have you also in our next program on the coming Friday, when we will talk about Alfred Loisy. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Aurelio.
Thank you, Aurelio.